Let's get into it, but before we do, I want to start off right up front and make this statement. It is highly unlikely that you as a man will ever know every important detail of a woman's past love life, as any aspect of her history that could reflect negatively on her will either be minimized or omitted. So you're probably only going to know what she thinks you know, and maybe you'll get some additional tidbits as you're with her for a long time. Something might slip out here and there, but you're never going to have the complete story. It's very rare, let's put it that way. So now let's get into our story, and this is told from the perspective of the woman here, and she's the poster. She's the original poster, the op. This was posted on June 18th of 2022. Not sure if this is a good idea, but I'm posting here to get feedback, hopefully from people who have been in a similar situation. I'm going to be as vague as possible with this throwaway account, as I don't want this post to be associated with me, my boyfriend, my family, or previous people in my life. Both my boyfriend and I are in our late 20s. We've been seeing each other now for over 2 years, and we became exclusive within 1 month of meetings, so they moved pretty quickly. We have great chemistry and get along very well. We both have our own homes that we each fully paid off on our own. So good for them. We're also lucky to live in one of the few big cities where real estate is actually somewhat affordable. While we live in separate homes, we usually end up spending 3 to 5 nights per week together, staying over at each other's homes. We think having separate homes is healthy for our relationship, and I agree with that as well. I don't know if such a thing exists, but we both feel we are soulmates. I can't ever see myself loving another man, and I believe he feels the same as me, as he's told me so a number of times. Neither of us believe in marriage, but we do believe in being monogamous life partners. We each have rubber athletic wedding bands we bought while on vacation in Mexico just 2 months into our relationship. It was a joke at first, but now these bands symbolize our perpetual love for each other. We're not materialistic people, and instead get enjoyment being with each other. While we never plan to marry, we have discussed having children together. It's something that both of us eventually want. I know he will be a wonderful father, and I feel strongly that I will be a great mom. I grew up in a small remote town in a coastal state that is as far away from coastal big city life as you can get. Saying my hometown is remote is an understatement, as the next closest town is over 45 miles away. Now, a little bit more about me. I grew up without a father. My dad got my mom pregnant when she was 18. He was a construction worker who was in town working with a company the county hired to replace storm ditches. The project lasted 6 months, but he bolted after 5. After he found out she was going to have a baby and has never been heard from since. My mom said she found out from talking with another construction worker a few years after I was born that my father was a married man. And that's likely why he went AWOL. To this day, I've never been able to locate him and enhance me. I did one of those DNA family tree tests, and it showed his family originated in the Bismarck, North Dakota area, but he no longer lives there. He says, oh well, and you can tell, though, the fact, just the way she wrote this, that she's someone who actually missed having, a father in the household, and she has daddy issues. What is commonly termed as daddy issues, and unfortunately in this country, there's something like 23 or 24% of households where there's no male present, and I think that's one of the biggest things that's tearing down our society. The United States has 3 times the level of fatherless households as the rest of the world, and like 4 or 5 times that of China, Russia, and India, the biggest competitors of the United States. And if that doesn't change, this country is just going to keep getting worse and worse from that perspective, unfortunately. My mom was and is a great mother and is my hero. She supported us by working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, at what was the only restaurant in town. We lived in a mobile home right on the main street. We were poor, but I never knew it growing up. We always had each other, and my mom instilled in me that life is all about experiences and not about owning things. And that's a good statement that our mother made there. I had a happy childhood, and since our town was so small, all the kids in my class were close. There were a few jerks, but even they weren't so bad, she says. When I was 17, I had my first and only other relationship in addition to my current boyfriend. We were each other's first and dated for about 2 years before mutually agreeing to break up and return to being just friends. There was no cheating or ill feelings by either of us. We just realized we were very different people. After graduating, I worked at the diner with my mom for 18 months and absolutely loved it. It gave me a lot of confidence and taught me hard work and people skills. While I loved working there, my dream was to one day live in one of the big cities on the coast. As I said before, Mom and I are really big on experiences, so she and I would go off exploring almost every weekend to the mountains, the coast, or the desert. One weekend, when we were in a certain large city, we fell in love with a section of town that had many great restaurants. While we couldn't afford to eat in these places, we would go in for a happy hour for food specials. There was one restaurant in particular that I just fell in love with. Talking with our server, she said they were hiring and I put in an application before leaving. They immediately called me in for an interview the next morning and offered me a job on the spot, making nearly 5 times what I was making at the diner. I decided to go for it. Mom was sad to see me go, but fully supported me pursuing my dream. I accepted a job and moved from my small town to the big city 2 weeks later. It just so happened the server I mentioned before shared an apartment with 2 other girls, and one of the girls was moving out, so they let me move in and we split expenses. It was a great spot just 3 blocks from the beach, so you got 3 girls living together, 3 blocks from the beach. Sounds like a lot of fun. I initially worked as a server and started training to be a bartender. Once I completed training in term 21, I was put behind the bar and quickly became the top performer in terms of drinks served and accumulated tips. My time spent working at the diner really prepared me well for working in the restaurant industry. Our restaurant bar was high-end and I made really good money. We had a number of regular customers at the bar, many of whom came in for happy hour and stayed for dinner several times per week. I made many great personal friends there and became close to a number of people. This is where I met the men who would eventually become my clients. It all happened on a whim. One of our regulars was a real estate broker who would come in 2 to 3 times a week right when we opened. Since it wasn't busy at the time, he and I got to know each other well. In one of our more personal conversations, he explained that he was in an open relationship at their request of his wife and wasn't pleased with it. Well, what do you know? We got a story within a story here, and it's a story it sounds like where a husband was again coerced by his wife into an open relationship. Boy, that sounds familiar. He asked if I'd ever considered dating him, and I told him I wouldn't. I explained it had nothing to do with his age, she says mid-40s, just that I would never date a married man. He explained the open relationship concept and said his wife would have no problem with it as she was active with multiple partners. He then asked me if I had a price. I just laughed as I didn't know what he meant. He explained and I just told him $1,000 an hour. How's that? I said in jest and laughed thinking he would do the same. He then said to me, "Are you serious?" And I said yes, I was, and again laughing out loud, so she wasn't serious. He paid his bill left and then returned spreading $2,100 bills out on the bar. I was shocked and told him I was just kidding, which made him embarrassed. I apologized and told him I was sorry for the misunderstanding. He said no problem, and he knew he could never get someone like me. He then asked if I would consider having dinner with him just to talk as friends. Yes, sure, just to talk as friends, on Monday or Tuesday when our place was closed. I felt sad for him, she says at this point, and agreed. How many of you out there think she's thinking something else besides just being sad for this guy? I think she sees, hey, this is a rich guy or a guy that's got money. He took me to the diner or to dinner, he took me to dinner at an ultra-exclusive restaurant that famous people frequent. At the end of the meal, he said to me his offer of $2,000 still stands. I don't know what came over me. It must have been a combination of alcohol, ovulating, feeling sorry for him, and personal greed. I accepted the offer. We went back to his place where he officially became my first client. So she got $2,000 for doing the deed with this real estate broker, this guy in his mid-40s. That's how I got started and how I picked up additional clients at the bar under similar circumstances. So she was working this out of the bar while she was tending bar. I did this for over 4 years while still bartending at the restaurant. Working the restaurant in this job enabled me to save a significant amount of money. After 4 years, I was getting burned out and decided I wanted to stop the crazy train and get my life in order. I took a job as a bar manager in an upscale restaurant and moved to the city where I now live. I bought a condominium, furniture, and a new SUV with cash. I love my new job at the restaurant, and it was there I met the love of my life. He stopped in one evening for dinner and ate at the bar. We got to talking, exchanged numbers, and the rest is history, as they say. So after that long-winded setup, she says, this brings me to my question. Should I tell my boyfriend about my past? Let me first explain that I already included my clients in my total body count of 6. So she's saying she's only been with 6 guys, the 4 clients, her current boyfriend, and that first boyfriend that she had. So the fact that I had S with these men is not going to be an issue. The issue will be that I was getting paid to go on dates with them, and what that says about me morally. On one hand, I feel so guilty keeping this from him. But on the other, I'm afraid if I tell him he might break up with me. I've also kept this secret from my mom, family, and friends, so I can't ask them for advice. That's why I'm asking this internet community. What should I do? I'd really like to hear from those women who have withheld or disclosed a deep secret from their man. So she specifically wants to hear from women who have kept secrets like this. So that's her original post. Now, she's got an edit update here from June 20, 2022. She says, "Thank you. I didn't expect to get so many responses. There seems to be some confusion about my previous life that I'd like to clarify." She says, "First, I do not regret my past. Second, I did not have sex with random men. During the 4 years I was active, I had a total of 4 clients, 3 regulars, and 1 guy I was with just 3 times during those years. As for my 3 regulars, I already discussed the real estate broker. The second client I picked up was a retired doctor age 64. So she was in her early 20s, and she's turning tricks for this 64-year-old doctor. He was a regular at the bar, and his wife died of liver cancer a year before I met him. The third client was an Asian executive who works for a very well-known tech company. Client 3 was by far the client I had the most interactions with. He would generally see me 2 to 3 times a week, while I saw client 1 once a week and client 2 twice a month. She says, no, I didn't charge $2.00 for each session like I did the first time. Instead, it averaged to be more like $450 per interaction with my regular. So she was meeting with guys here. Let's see, 8 for client number 3 a month, 8 times a month, twice with client number 1, or no number. Yeah, number 1. She met with him once a week, so that's 12. And then the other guy, she met with twice, so that's like 14 times a month. She was having these sessions and she was making like $450. So she was pulling in like $7,000 in addition to her bartending work. So that's why she was able to sock away so much money. Someone asked if I cared for my clients. The answer is yes. I cared for them as friends, but not as love partners. To me, it was business. Though I did and do thoroughly enjoy and enjoy the I had with each of them. So she's not regretting what she did, and she's saying she enjoyed that work, and she's making that clear to people who I guess were asking her questions. Finally, guys, please be nice. She says, I know what I did is not morally acceptable. Most people, but some of the comments are really crude and totally unnecessary. So that was her update. Now I want to read some responses from community members. And again, I picked out 2 females and 2 men. And I hid their handles because, again, I don't want to use, people's identifying handles in this video for privacy purposes. So I'm just going to label them female 1 female to male 1 male 2. So here's female 1. She said, I cried when I read your story as it brought back so many memories. I was actually a streetwalker, as you call it, and was also hooked on drugs for nearly 5 years. I finally got help, stopped doing tricks, sobered up, and moved back to my hometown where I married my high school sweetheart. We've been happily married for 22 years now and have 3 kids. He knows nothing about my working days or my drug addiction. If I would have told him back when we started dating, we would have never married. No one in my hometown knows about my past, and thankfully there has never been any close calls. Keep the secret, OP, and good luck to you, she says. Now here's one from one of the males, and this is likely one of the male haters that she was talking about. He says, tell your boyfriend he deserves to know that he's been dating a garden tool, and then he can determine if he wants to stay with you. I would drop you like a hot skillet. Hopefully you got thoroughly tested and cleaned out before you started having sex with him. But knowing people like you, I highly doubted. So that was a male respondent. Now here's another male respondent, but this guy is much more of a nice guy, I guess, or more of a blue-pilled person, because he says, your story brought tears to my eyes. You seem like a beautiful person, both inside and out. Your past is your past, and it's your business. I do believe your boyfriend has a right to know, and I suggest you tell him. That said, if I was your boyfriend, I would be wiping you up as soon as possible. Please email me if you'd like to talk further, or if things don't work out. And he sends her a wink in the response. So that was from a blue-pilled guy. Now, here's a second female. She says, don't tell him. I was in a long-term relationship with the love of my life, and we were moving towards marriage when I decided to come clean and tell him about my college escapades. Like you, I included the men in my body count, just not the gory details. Well, my boyfriend dumped me and ended up marrying my ex-best friend forever. I'm happily married now myself to a great man and have 2 wonderful kids, but every once in a while, I still think back to those days and ask myself, what if I kept my big mouth shut? Sometimes we women are just too honest for our own good, which ends up costing us in the long run. Best of luck to you and your boyfriend, whatever you decide. So in that response as well, you gotta think about this guy that this woman is married to now. That this woman, even though she's married to this wonderful man and has wonderful kids, she's still thinking about the guy that got away from her years ago. So there's a lesson in that response, greater than just what she was responding to the OP here. Now, here's an update from the OP, the original poster dated July 29th of 2022. Sorry for the delay in getting back. Many of you have been asking for an update. After thinking through everything, I've decided to tell my boyfriend about my past. There is a high level of risk doing this, but at least I will have a clear conscience as I think about this all the time right now, and it's really messing with my mind. I'm not going to rush to tell him as I'm really nervous. I'll wait until the time is right and I feel up to discussing this with him. It may be tomorrow, it may be next week, or it may be next year, but I will do it and get back to everyone with a final update. She says, say a little prayer for us if you find it in your heart to do so. So now we're going to get to the final update, and you can see she waited like 4 or 5 months, maybe even a little bit more than that, because the final update is from January 9th of just this year. She says, hopefully all of you remember me from my story and updates from last summer. If not, please go back and read my original post. Well, I told my boyfriend everything yesterday morning. We were spending a lazy morning at my house after waking up, and I told him I had something to tell him and just went for it. I apologized and told him that I will be forever broken if he leaves me, but would understand if he did. His initial reaction was to hold me tight without speaking. I thought I was being dumped. Then he spent the next 2 hours asking me questions about those years. He also asked if I had been faithful to him throughout our relationship, which of course I had been. He explained I gave him news that no man wants to hear about his woman, and learning of this does jade how he feels about me. But he loves me and said he wanted to continue our relationship. I asked if he'd still be willing to have kids someday, and he said possibly. Now remember, before he was all for it. But now, of course, with this out there, he's got some very serious doubts, and he should have some very serious doubts. She says not what I wanted to hear, but I'll work on that. I feel so relieved getting this off my chest. For now, we're taking things one day at a time and both realize that he may have second thoughts or completely change his mind about our relationship once he has time to thoroughly process things. I don't think that will happen as we are so bonded and have been there for each other every step of the way for the past 2 years. So that's where things stand as of today. I don't plan on updating again unless he changes his mind and breaks up with me. If he does so, I would be devastated, and I pray to God every night this does not happen. I want to thank all the strong women out there for their kind and inspirational responses. There were also a few great guys that gave me support and strength. I wish you all good luck and good health in 2023. So that's her story. Now, let me tell you how I would have handled this situation if I was this guy. First of all, I would rush right out and get STD tested to make sure she didn't give me an STD. Number 2, I would immediately dial the relationship back to a friends with benefits. I would explain to her that yes, you've given me 2 wonderful years and I really enjoyed my time with you and we had a great relationship. But this is information you should have told me right up front, and I may have made a different decision. I may have decided either to move forward with the relationship with you or maybe just dated you, and that's it. Maybe just the friends with benefits right out of the gate. But I would have immediately dialed this back to a friends with benefits, and I would be upfront with her about that because you owe that to her. She's been good to you, but she kept this very important information from you, and I would definitely not marry her. Of course, I don't believe in marriage in today's modern society because there's no benefit to men to marriage. I definitely would not cohabitate with her, and I most definitely would not have a child with her, and I would explain to her, we can take this relationship one day at a time, see if it blossoms. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't and it just fizzles out, over time, then that's what I'm offering you. But that's how I would handle it. Now I want to hear from you. How would you handle this situation? Would you handle it like her boyfriend is handling it? Basically just pay for giving her, and going on with their relationship as it was before. Would you handle it like I'm suggesting dialing it back to an FWB? Or would you have just dropped her right on the spot once you found out that she was a working girl before? Would that have been it for you and you would have just dropped her? Let us know. Give us your comments on that. Love to see the comments from all of you getting comments on these videos from all over the world. And it's really interesting to read those comments. And I think they're very helpful to men out there that are dealing with relationships. Hit that like button because that will move this video up on the YouTube algorithm. Share it with your friends and please subscribe to this great channel. And I will talk to you on the next one.